Oh my God. Here we go again. Men talking about stuff that's gonna help them be free. This is an Infinium podcast, which is entitled The Cracking Process. What the heck is that? What the heck is the cracking process? Oh my God, I just wish I could get these men to just shut up.
My brothers, welcome to the third edition of the Infinium podcast. And first of all, I would like to thank you, my brothers, for listening to my content, considering the information given within that content. And it is my hope that the information provided, the details of that information are a help to you, my brothers, in terms of your walk along the MGTOW pathway, the pathway that takes you to freedom. Now, getting into the cracking process itself, when I first became aware of the cracking process, it was about 7 years ago, and along the time when I began to produce MGTOW content mainly. I did also produce some REDPILL content, but it was mainly MGTOW content. But nevertheless, I became aware of this process. And initially, I thought that this process was simplistic in nature because I thought it was basically just manipulation. But my brothers, as I began to look into this process and began to analyze it, research into it, I found that it is well beyond the point of manipulation. And again, it is something that can be highly dangerous to all we men who seek our freedom. Now, the cracking process itself is, again, simplistic in nature. It is designed to undermine a man in every way possible. And as well, the purpose of the cracking process is also simplistic in nature, and that is to demonstrate the superiority of the woman's mind over a man's mind. So again, you have the two simplistic on face value aspects of the cracking process. Again, to undermine a man in every way possible. And then secondly, to demonstrate a woman's superiority in terms of her thinking processes over a man's thinking processes. Now, when you get into going beyond the simplistic aspects of the cracking process, it becomes that much more intricate in nature. Because when you look at the cracking process overall, things like control, manipulation, gaslighting, all those things that which occur with the cracking process can become subset components of the cracking process. And as well, the overall purpose of the cracking process, again, can be anything from cracking a man so that he can be divorce raped to a just for the hell of it type of deal with a man. So again, my brothers, that is why initially, when you look at the cracking process, it should not be taken for granted that it is a simplistic type of deal. That was one of the mistakes that I made with this aspect of the types of things we face with women. It is not simplistic. It is not a simple matter of a woman trying to manipulate you. Again, it is to undermine you and to secondarily demonstrate her superiority in terms of her thinking processes over your thinking processes. And so the aforementioned makes that very dangerous because that can open up a range of things that happen to you with a cracking process. And it can open up a range of women, going from your mother to a woman that you meet in the grocery store. Any woman who is in a westernized society has the capability of cracking you as a man. And so therefore, my brothers, that is why even with the most innocuous types of encounters with a woman, you must be careful because, again, you can be in a scenario where she cracks you, and the next thing you know, you're in a realm of trouble. Now, my brothers, again, the cracking process has subset components by which it can operate, and that is why it makes it much more dangerous than what it seems. Because, for instance, a cracking process could have a specific purpose, again, to crack you as a man for the purpose of preparing you for divorce rape. Also, it can be for the purpose of just for the hell of it. So what I'm saying, my brothers, again, there can be a purpose, there can be a specific purpose, and there also can be a non-purpose. So again, you could have a scenario where a woman cracks you just for the heck of it, just to fulfill her feelings of superiority over you. So for instance, you could be at a gas station, a woman comes along and cracks you, and you never meet her again. But she goes away with a feeling of superiority over you, wherein she knows that she cracked you, and that emboldens her to proceed with cracking men on a regular basis, just going out and cracking men to get a gratification out of it. And I would say in certain cases, it also brings her sexual gratification because she has superiority over the men that she cracked. So taking into account the aforementioned scenario, there is no specific goal. There is no defined goal to what the woman is doing in terms of her cracking men on a random basis. It is just solely for her gratification in her mind to prove to herself that she is superior to the men who she cracks. So again, there is no specific purpose in terms of like getting men to put gas into a car or anything like that. It is just solely for the gratification in her mind that she was capable of cracking men randomly who she did not know, just to prove that she has a superior mind to those men that she cracked. Now, the cracking process can also involve a specific goal. So again, this woman at the gas station wants you to put gas into her car, and she will use that cracking process to accomplish that purpose. So again, if you are the type of MGTOW man who regularly, when he goes to gas up his ride, he sees women who ask him for help or ask him to put money into their cars and everything, and you regularly say no, this woman will use a cracking process to undermine you for the specific purpose of breaking down that stance of saying no, so that you wind up putting gas into a car. And even worse, you wind up giving her your number so she can dial you up at night and say, can you give me some money out of your bank account to help me with the problem? That can happen to you. So again, the cracking process can be, quote unquote, for a specific targeted purpose, and it can also be for a non-purpose or a purpose that does not have any goal to it in terms of getting something out of a man. So moving on with the cracking process, if you look at things in the manner that any woman has the capability of cracking you, this opens up a range of women, going from your mother, your sister, your aunt, the woman that you work with on your job, a woman that you meet randomly, an acquaintance. Any woman who is in a westernized society has the capability of cracking you. And that is why, my brothers, you have to have your wits about you in every type of interaction with women. This is because the cracking process is an offensive tactical weapon which any woman can use upon a man for a specific purpose or a non-specific purpose. As well, the cracking process can occur over the course of a few minutes all the way to over the course of a few years. That's why, again, my brothers, it's important to understand why it is important to have your wits about you when a cracking process is attempted upon you. Now, when you get into the time frames of a cracking process, the aspect of a long-term cracking process may mean for a man that he has to undergo this type of process for a number of years, because the goal and the aim of the cracking process is to do something specific in terms of destroying that man in every way possible. So again, it can be something like divorce, rape, or destroying his business. Any type of thing like that can happen with a long-term cracking process. But again, a short-term cracking process can also be quite devastating. For instance, you can have a scenario where you're working at a job and a woman cracks you, and because of the cracking, she obtains information which she uses against you to get you fired from that job. Now, to give an example of what I mean when a woman uses a short-term cracking process on you and it results in you losing your job or something like that, back when I was working in the retail sector, I was working in the electronics section of a store. And at that time, I had the capability to work all throughout that store that I was working in. But that night, I was working in the electronics section. So a woman comes into the store and she wants to buy this TV set. And from her questioning of me and her sizing me up and everything, I knew immediately that she was going to attempt to crack me. And at that time, I had some awareness of what the cracking process was, and what women would do in terms of the cracking process. And also, because of the way I look, I'm a black guy with a geeky, nerdy look about me. So I knew immediately in my mind that she had sized me up, saw me as an easy target. And I knew, again, from her questioning of me, the things that she said to me initially, that she was going to attempt to crack me. So she gets into this discussion with me about the TV set. And of course, I sell her the TV set and everything. I show her the particular models and everything. And she says this TV set is for her grandmother and this and that, and whatever. And then she gets into this routine about, if my grandmother doesn't like this, can I bring it back and can I get it exchanged and this and that. And I told her the policies and everything. And she gets into this thing again about bringing the TV back and can I get my money back and this and that and whatever. And I told her the policies again. And so then she gets into the ethics of it. And she begins to question me. How do I feel about customers bringing back TV sets? And I knew from that point that what she was trying to do was to find a weakness in me, something that I said, something that I slipped up on, so that she could, first of all, bring that TV back, kind of scam the company on it, because we knew at that point that customers would come in and buy these TV sets and then bring them back, and they would just exchange them or just get the money back and everything, and they would scam the store. So we were told by the store management to, as much as we could, to not allow customers to do that as much as we could. But again, she began to get into this discussion about the ethics and how did I feel about it, this and that, whatever. And I knew in my mind immediately that she's going to attempt to crack me. And so what I did was to throw the answer back at her in a form of a question to put the ball back in her court, so to speak. And so that began about an hour and 20-minute exchange between me and this woman, where she was trying to crack me, and I was resisting that process. And she was so intent on cracking me that she actually said something like, I have to go to the bathroom, but I'm going to come back to you. And she actually did go to the bathroom and came back to me and tried to, again, intensively crack me. And what happened was, it was towards the end of the night. And so it got to the point where the store was closing and I was able to hold her off until the store closed. I'm like, okay, you got to go. The store's closing and everything. And that ended that. But again, she intensively tried to crack me over the course of an hour and 20 minutes or so in terms of trying to get me to say something or do something where she could go back and return that TV and say something like, oh, he told me that I can return this TV, I can get this and get this, that type of thing. And I will get into trouble over that type of thing because it would have been a lie from her standpoint to management about me. As well, it may have been likely that she would have gone home with a dopamine rush or a sense of sexual gratification, again, because she was successful in terms of her cracking process upon me. Now, let's look at what she specifically did. Number one, she targeted me as a man who she perceived to be naive in nature because of my geeky, nerdy looks. Number two, she tried to undermine my morality and my ethics by getting me to align with her immorality and her unethical behavior. If she was successful in getting me to align with her unethical behavior and her immorality, she would have used that alignment as a weapon upon me to do anything to me in terms of lying about the TV set if she returned it, lying about what I did, what I said to her, or even further, coercing me to participate in criminal activities like fraud. Again, if she was successful in cracking me, she could have done anything and everything to me. And also note that this was a short-term cracking process which she attempted upon me. Now, if we continue on and look at what happens with a long-term cracking process, perhaps the greatest example of a long-term cracking process which was successful is what happened with Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith. Now, the end run of that cracking process, or the end result of that cracking process, was the Oscar slap incident which occurred between Will Smith and Chris Rock. But if you look at what happened specifically to Will Smith here, the cracking process was long term as it occurred over the course of a few years, and it was for the purpose of undermining his image of being a strong, confident black male. Now, of course, we all are familiar with Will Smith's work in terms of his acting and musical career. For instance, there are movies like the Men in Black series, I, Robot, Bad Boys, anything that you can think of in terms of his acting and musical career. It can be seen that Will Smith is a highly talented, very capable black man. But if you look again at what was going on in terms of the cracking process, for instance, if you look at some of the past YouTube videos, the Facebook Table Talk series that Jada Pinkett Smith did, you can see where Will Smith was undergoing a cracking process which was being performed on him by Jada Pinkett Smith. So, for instance, if you look at specifically the Table Talk series, there was one of those shows where Will Smith is sitting at a table with Jada Pinkett Smith, and she is basically cracking him in real life by exposing her morality, her debauchery, whatever you would say, in terms of what she did, in terms of having an affair with another guy, so to speak, and Will Smith having to sit there at that table and accept her unethical behavior, accept what she did, and having to suck up and shut up. And there you can see at that point that Will Smith, that image of him being a strong, confident black male who is capable of taking care of any woman that he wants to have, you can see his confidence being undermined and stripped from him right at that very point. Because you see the look on his face, the kind of sad, forlorn look that he has when Jada Pinkett Smith is explaining her quote unquote romantic entanglement. And so at that point where, quote unquote, a man worth his salt would have walked away, Smith instead sits there and endures her cracking of him to the extent that he is undermined and he is forced to align with Jada's quote unquote debauchery. And he has to accept it from that point. So if you flash forward to what happened at the Oscar incident in 2022, the end run of that cracking process happened at that Oscar ceremony. This is because of Smith's being undermined in terms of his image of being a strong, confident black male to being a weak, insecure black male. When a joke is made about his wife by Chris Rock, he goes into simp mode, gets up on the stage with Chris Rock and slaps him. And in the process of doing that, he basically destroys his career. He destroys what he stood for. He destroys his image, all because, again, due to Jada's cracking of him. And again, the result of that cracking process being what happened at the Oscar incident. And this is the danger, my brothers, because Will Smith will never be able to live that incident down no matter what he does. He even won an Oscar after that. But again, he will never be able to live that incident down because it is all over the internet. It is seen what he did, exactly what he did. There's no way that he can try to cover up what happened. It is all public knowledge. And it will live on forever because of the internet, because of YouTube, because of Rumble, whatever. It will live on in infamy. And if you notice what happened during the incident, Jada Pinkett Smith is seen to be sitting back and allowing him to do these things instead of trying to get him to stop what he's doing because of the potential of damage which would be done to his career. She allowed him to go onto that stage, slap Chris Rock, and come back to his seat, and then go into a curse-laden tirade about him not wanting Chris Rock to talk about his wife. So instead of trying to calm Will Smith down and trying to tell him to not do something which was contrary to his image, contrary to who he was, Jada Pinkett Smith sat back and watched Will Smith destroy himself. And also, she watched him simp out in public in front of the whole wide world. That is the danger of these types of things, my brothers. That is the danger of what can happen to you with a cracking process, whether it is short term or long term. You can wind up in a scenario where your life is fully destroyed and the woman that cracked you sits back and laughs at you along with the world in certain cases while you're being destroyed. Now, my brothers, continuing on from Will Smith's case, I would like to give an example of how a cracking process can cause both personal devastation as well as wide-scale collective devastation. In this case, we're going to look at the content creator Think Before You Sleep and Brittany Venti. Now, before he was successfully cracked by Brittany Venti, Think Before You Sleep was a heavily MGTOW-leaning and Red Pill-leaning content creator. Brittany Venti herself is a type of content creator who has a highly checkered past and can be considered a grifter overall. As well, Think Before You Sleep and Brittany Venti stood at opposite ends of the poles because they were both content creators who had huge subscriber bases, but Think Before You Sleep stood at the pole, supposedly, of morality and defending men's rights, and Brittany Venti stood at the opposite end of the pole in terms of taking away men's rights and enslaving them. So what happened with Think Before You Sleep is this. Brittany Venti basically cracked him by using the standpoint of his naivety to undermine him for the purpose of getting Think Before You Sleep to align himself with Brittany Venti's debauchery. Over the course of a year, when Think Before You Sleep was being cracked by Brittany Venti, you can see where the cracking process was occurring upon him, because there is a shift from being ardently MGTOW leaning and red pill leaning to being against MGTOW, against red pill. And that again is just like with Will Smith. It is a shifting from one stance to another stance because of the cracking process going on. And even further, Think Before You Sleep was so convinced of Brittany Venti's being faithful to him and being a good wife that he actually gave her an engagement ring. So that is how far she was able to crack him. Now, flash forward to this year. A few weeks ago, it was announced that Brittany Venti dumped Think Before You Sleep. And so that's where, again, the devastation, both personally and collectively, can occur. Because, first of all, Think Before You Sleep, like Will Smith, was made to look like a fool by Brittany Venti. That damaged his reputation, that made him to look like a traitor and a coward to the MGTOW community and the red pill communities. That happened. But my brothers, it is also the message that Brittany Venti sent to those communities at large, collectively. And that is, I can do this to any one of you. I can take you down. I can change your stance. Even if you're ardently MGTOW, ardently red pill, I can do this to you because I did this to Think Before You Sleep. And so right there, that is a part of the devastation that Brittany Venti did because of a successful cracking process that took place upon Think Before You Sleep. The other aspect of it is it casts a shadow upon his work prior to him being cracked. Again, Think Before You Sleep had a great volume of work that he had done prior to the cracking process. And I would say for myself, I used to listen to his content and found some of his work to be somewhat helpful in where I was going as a MGTOW man. But now there is the shadow of betrayal and the question of, was he sincere when he was producing that content, or was he doing it for the purpose of grifting? But in any case, my brothers, the aforementioned is an example of what can happen in terms of individual destruction as well as wide-scale destruction, which can occur because of a successful cracking process. Similar to Will Smith, Think Before You Sleep will now have to deal with both a personal loss of credibility as well as a wide-scale loss of credibility because of what was done to him. Now, moving on to the elephant in the room question, and that question is, have we as men been successfully cracked in the past? And my brothers, the answer to that question is most probably yes. I know for myself that answer to that question, have I been cracked in the past, is yes, I have been cracked in the past. For example, the last woman I considered for marriage, and this is going on some 25-ish years ago, this woman basically was successful in cracking me. And she was able to undermine me to the extent that she caused me to align myself with her notion that I had to be a simp who bowed down to her, who came to her every beck and call. Now, at that time, I did not know what the cracking process was. I didn't understand it. And you could say to that extent that my being cracked was also a part of the naivety that I had at that time, that the only way that you could really work with a woman or have a woman in your life was to be a simp. But now I know better. So yes, the answer to that question is most probably yes, you have been cracked by a woman successfully in the past. Now, the other elephant in the room question would be, is the cracking process abuse? My brothers, you have to look at it this way. Your mind is being toyed with when a cracking process occurs with you. So that means that the woman that is doing that to you, the woman that is cracking you, is toying with your mind. That in itself, my brothers, is abuse because it is a total disregard of your dignity. It is a disregarding of what is in your mind, how your mind works, your ability to critically think. Again, it is her lack of respect for you as a man because she is toying with your mind. Remember also that when a woman performs a cracking process, it is to demonstrate her superior thinking processes over your thinking processes. So again, it is disrespect of you as a man because of her toying with your mind, because she is performing a cracking process upon you. So that means, my brothers, again, she is doing that to you because she fundamentally does not respect you in every way possible. So that means, my brothers, even your mother, who is cracking you and trying to undermine you, also is abusing you because she is doing that to you, my brothers. Cracking fundamentally is mental abuse, my brothers. You have to understand that. And it doesn't matter where the source of it comes from. It is mental abuse, and it can be, in certain cases, tormenting. So whether it's your mother that's doing it or a woman in the grocery store, a woman that you work with, it is still mental abuse because the women that do these things to men are toying with those men's minds. That, my brothers, again, is mental abuse in every way possible. You must understand as well that the cracking process is not only mental abuse, but it can lead to physical abuse. And you can look at the case of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. Johnny Depp was cracked by Amber Heard, and it led to his being mentally and physically abused by Amber Heard. My brothers, the cracking process is highly dangerous. It should be considered as such because, again, it is mental abuse. It is something that is successful. It can devastate you in every way possible. It can alter the course of your life, my brothers, in every way possible. And that is why, again, my brothers, you must have your wits about you in terms of your interactions with women. You must consider that if you, for instance, you go into a grocery store and you're like me, you avoid interactions with women. And when they try to talk to you, you just go along about your business. When those women react to you, instead of just sucking up and going on about their business, and when they begin to scream at you and curse at you, just because you would not speak to them in a grocery store, and they do things like follow you around in a grocery store, part of the reason why they are mad is because you closed the door to them being able to crack you. That is why they get mad. That is part of the reason why women get mad when men will not interact with them in public places anymore. It is also part of the reason why women in the workplace get mad at men who will not mentor them, who will not work with them or talk with them at lunchtime. It is the same reason the door is being closed to women in terms of their abilities to crack men. And even in the workplace, my brothers, you can see part of the reason why women are now complaining about men not interacting with them is because their capability to crack men has been taken away from them. So, my brothers, again, look at it in the manner of your mind and the powerful nature of your mind, that it is not something to be toyed with, not something to be manipulated, but your mind is part of who you are as a man and part of who you are as a MGTOW man, therefore making it a powerful component of why you as a MGTOW man are going your own way in freedom and in peace. My brothers, in closing, I will just stress to you again that it is important to understand that you must keep your wits about you with every interaction with women these days because of the times that we live in, because of the conditions that we live in. And as well, my brothers, I will add in that it is important that you walk in integrity as a MGTOW man. Keeping your wits about you and walking in integrity can go a long way in terms of you defeating a cracking process if it is attempted upon you. With that being said, my brothers, I will end this edition of the Infinium podcast. And as always, my brothers, stay safe. This is the MGTOW Infinium, and this has been an Infinium podcast. My MGTOW brothers, always remember that you have the right to be free in every way possible because you are free men.